Welcome to the Mild Opinion Podcast. I'm Luke.
I'm Logan.
And today we are running with an idea that was at one point rumored for the Star Wars franchise, which is that they would do a What If series similar to Marvel's What If series, where they just basically imagine scenarios of if their core story took a different direction, usually from one or two just very little, well, not little, but major minor changes and how that could greatly impact the story. And this is just some picks we have for what we think would make great episodes for such a show. So why don't you tell me your first pick
My
for
first,
What If?
a pretty big one, I think. But what if Anakin decided to save Windu and kill Palpatine instead of saving Palpatine?
Yeah, so do you have... I guess with us discussing these, we'll kind of go into what might be some things that would happen from that. So a question I'll throw in there with this scenario is, do you think Anakin would still fall to the dark side?
Well, see, it's kind of difficult because he was already dabbling with the dark side and like his anger and stuff enough. I think that was like the catalyst of like what really set it off. But I think he probably still would have, because also like not only, and you know, this is gonna get like technical and stuff, so I don't want all of the major Star Wars fans to come for me, but he was already dabbling with the dark side and stuff anyway. So I think that would probably continue. I don't think he would have been set off the way that he was down that path in the movies if he, killed Palpatine. But I do think that he would have continued dabbling with it until he turned eventually later on. I think he would have kind of picked up the mantle.
Yeah, I think though, in him being there and killing Palpatine, there probably would be some sort of exchange still the same, where like Palpatine's like, Anakin, like I told you this would happen. Mace Windu obviously would be then sitting there like, you want to shed some light on what exactly is going on? But I think it could have been then that maybe Anakin, like the rest of the Jedi, like come together and are like, listen, like, we're trying to fix this and like help you, and maybe he'd be like, okay, yeah, he was a bad dude. But I could still see like he still would have the problem of believing Padme is going to die and believing that the Jedi can't solve this problem, and still would have all the little things that lead up to him becoming Vader. I just think in that what if scenario, I believe that he could avoid fully falling, but I also could see if Star Wars was to take that storyline, just being like, no, he's just gonna become evil in a different way.
See, that's kind of what I was thinking. If they decided to do that, I feel like in that scenario, if he did go down the path of darkness still, he would maybe even become worse, because he'd get so obsessed with the like teachings of the Sith and stuff to try and save Padme.
When he get like he's top dog now.
Yeah, he wouldn't even necessarily become Vader. He would just become he would be the Emperor essentially, which might be even worse.
Yeah, well, he would still have the knowledge too of like that there is potentially an answer out there to immortality and like saving Padme and stuff. So I think in him telling the Jedi that, I could see them trying to like shut it down really quickly, and that setting him off as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even say there's necessarily a good case now that I think about it to be made for him just being saved.
Yeah. Well, and also, not to get into this one too much because we have more to go.
This actually kind of goes with one I had, which I'll just group into this though, which is what if it was Mace Windu just killed Palpatine and Anakin let it happen. Yeah. I'd say it's the same thing.
Yeah. But I think also another thing to point out is that if he did continue to seek out like somewhere out there's this knowledge that I can learn to save her.
Yeah.
That also he probably wouldn't have been fighting Obi-Wan, which means he probably would have been still like full power, like intact Anakin.
Yeah.
Which also means if he was going to find all that stuff, he probably would have been reading a bunch of like Sith teachings and stuff, which means his force power probably would have been even stronger than it was.
The thing is too is I think in a scenario like that where Palpatine would die and Anakin would still go on a hunt for something like that. The thing is like through extended stuff we know at least Yoda knows of some Sith homeworlds and stuff, and there's like forbidden texts and Jedi knowledge and stuff about places like this, so that would pair into the stuff of Jedi not sharing everything with him and like keeping him out of the loop, which could just, again, it could do the exact same thing. It could just be a lot more disorganized and honestly like violent on Anakin's account, you know.
The other thing too, one more last little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing with that too, though, is like, you know, just a disclaimer before everyone starts arguing in our comments. This is just speculation. Also, you know, I understand. You know, I mean, if that happens, Padme may not die, and you know, who knows what would happen. You know what I mean? Like, everything's different. Like, I understand that, but like, yeah, this is just based off what we know and what happens and what we think could happen. Because also, I think the way that, like, the Force works and stuff like that, like the Force gods and all that, it was pretty much like, you know, fated that Anakin becomes evil and Padme dies and so on and so forth. Like, it's one of those things in Star Wars where it's like something could have changed it, but with how like the Force supposedly works and stuff, fate's kind of pretty set. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's kind of like it can work out in different ways.
That's like the thing about them having future visions and stuff, is Yoda says like, oh yeah, the Force, the future and everything's like always in motion. But that's kind of the point of Revenge of the Sith too, is like in trying to stop what he sees coming, Anakin causes it. So I think, yeah, he could move the path and shift it and stuff, but I think in the end it would still play out relatively similarly.
Yeah, and they talk about that too a little bit in the Ahsoka show and stuff, where she, you know, whatever. It's too much. Continue with what you were going on.
I'll throw one out that I've seen people talk. I feel like I heard this a while back, but I always just think this is an interesting one because I don't necessarily know how far along it would go. Is what if Qui-Gon Jin in the battle of Naboo between like him and Obi-Wan and Maul won and beat Maul and lived through the next two movies?
See, I also had that. That was literally my next one was going to be that. So
yeah, we might have some similar ones here.
Yeah.
I think in terms of if they were to actually make something like that, I think it would get to a point where Qui-Gon himself is seeing that Anakin has more of this like destructive streak to him, but I honestly could see, I think the most interesting way to go through with a storyline like that is if Qui-Gon being there actually would have stopped Anakin from becoming Vader.
That was kind of my thoughts with it as well, is because like Qui-Gon was very wise, but he was also more of like a stern master compared to like Obi-Wan. So I feel like going down that path, because like the way that kind of worked out with like Obi-Wan, like obviously Obi-Wan became Anakin's master and everything like that, and you know, all in all, they were like, they've said it before, like they were like close to being like brothers pretty much, you know what I mean? But like I feel like since Qui-Gon would have been there from the beginning as well, and it wouldn't have just been Obi-Wan, he probably would have stepped in and been like, hey, this doesn't seem to be working out like we hoped. Like somebody's got to do something. So I feel like he would have a good shot at maybe correcting it. Because also I feel like he would have paid a little bit closer eye to like what Anakin was doing, rather like, compared to like some of the others. Like Yoda kind of had like a sense of like, oh, something weird's going on.
Yeah. And
then Obi-Wan was like, you know, kind of telling Anakin like, oh yeah, like you don't need to be hanging out with Palpatine.
Sure.
But he never like was like, hey, stop.
Yeah. Well, I think too, the other Jedi, it seems, and I don't even think this is necessarily something explicit, but it seems like Qui-Gon, out of all the Jedi, even over Obi-Wan, took the prophecy and believing Anakin was the chosen one, like, way more seriously than anybody else. And after he's gone, it's almost like the other Jedi and stuff will just brush it off. Like, that they don't really believe it, or they're just like, yeah, this prophecy says so. But, like, even Mace Windu calls that into question at a certain point, is like, I don't know if I believe that. And, you know, it ended up being true in a way, but I think with Qui-Gon and how seriously he took it, and, like, going against what the council wants and putting Obi-Wan in the position of, like, becoming a Jedi Knight so that he could train Anakin, I think that immediately puts that his priority is that he believes he is supposed to take this kid and, like, raise him up properly and stuff. So I think the most interesting scenario in a what if like that, because a lot of them could just be, oh, it plays out the same way, would be he fulfills the prophecy in the best way possible by being there in the way Anakin needed, you know. That's just my take on that what if.
Yeah, that's kind of... I feel like I shared, like, the same sentiment on that one. That was kind of what I had in mind before you said it.
Yeah.
My next one, this one's I think this one would be pretty big. This is the last one that I have for the prequels. Sure. What if Obi-Wan didn't end up killing General Grievous, so the droid army stayed strong, he was still around, like, they didn't lose that part of the battle before Order 66.
Wow. You mean, so would Grievous kill Obi-Wan in that scenario?
I mean, not necessarily, but Grievous would just still be alive, still get out of there, and still keep doing what he's doing. Because, I mean, in the movies, it doesn't seem that apparent, but, like, when you see, like, the Clone Wars and all that, he was a big problem for a long time.
Yeah. What if Grievous survived? Basically, well, yeah, like, what if he continued to be a problem? Because he was kind of the last... I kind of, in a way, feel like Palpatine anticipated him being killed because then he would have been a problem for Anakin. Mm-hmm. But I think, too, like, one of the core aspects of Grievous is that he's cowardly, so I think as soon as he would escape, it would either delay Palpatine's plan, or Palpatine would have no choice but to go through with the plan anyway, because what's going on with Grievous doesn't really have an effect on his plan unfolding with Anakin. Mm-hmm. So I think Anakin being there would still force his hand, and then Grievous would have the foresight of, like, oh, he's going to betray me, and then might become more of a problem with him. Honestly, in a what-if scenario, if they were to do it, like, with Star Wars and stuff, just, like, riffing off what you're saying, I think cool it would be Grievous runs away, Palpatine's hand is forced by Anakin anyway, to break into that, and then if Grievous and Maul crossed paths in the underworld of trying to, like, screw with Palpatine's plans, I think would be a really cool direction to go with that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of an idea that I had when I put that down, is because I was like, you know, we've already seen this before, because I was like, you know, Maul kind of had, like, the same thing happen to him, you know what I mean? Like, escape, but then be like, oh man, this is, like, no bueno.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening? Because, like, you know, not necessarily agreeing with, like, the Jedi and stuff, but also being like, dude, this is nuts.
Yeah.
So, like, I could see something like that where, like, they start, like, their own kind of whole shebang, like, together or something like that. Yeah. Just kind of being like, man.
Well, two of also, like, the most popular Star Wars villains, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I think that's a really interesting one. That's like, a very specific avenue to take with, like, follow Grievous, then what would he do?
Yeah. Right? Well, the other thing, too, is that, you know, eventually because of Order 66 and all that, like, Palpatine, or I guess Sidious, and Anakin, at that point it's not even Anakin or Vader, like, he's not really that deep into it, but Sidious's plan wins because of Order 66. But with, like, everything else involved, like, the droid army and stuff like that, and, like, the Trade Federation and all that, I'm like, that would have been, like, a thing that continued to linger throughout that, too. So it's like, you know, would the droid army and, like, Trade Federation been a problem opposite of, like, Palpatine, or
Yeah.
would that have been like a,
Well, I think Grievous too has a survival streak in him of knowing that he has a stake in keeping the other members of the Trade Federation, like the banking clan and all that stuff, alive. So I think another avenue they could take with that is that he goes to Mustafar and then Anakin gets there at the same time and those two fight or something like that. Which there's a lot of different ways you could go with that. You could even make it like Anakin gets there the same time as Grievous. Somehow Grievous beats him and that's how he becomes Darth Vader or something like that. Even though I think Anakin would... I don't think Grievous could beat Anakin, honestly.
I don't either. Well, especially too, because like...
But for a what-if scenario, it would be interesting. You know, they could do anything.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing about it too, is like anything could happen, but also seeing a what if specifically about that, where Grievous is on Mustafar and fights Anakin and all that, like instead of it being Obi, that'd be cool.
That'd be real cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be real cool. All right, another what if I have is what if this is another Anakin one. What if Anakin killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar and didn't get chopped up?
Oh, see, at least for me, I don't know, but I think the direction would kind of go in the same way that we were talking about how it would have with like him being without Palpatine, like the Mace Windu stuff, is if he were full bodied, I think he would almost just be unstoppable, really.
Yeah.
Like once he really dived deep into like the Sith teachings and stuff, if he were not limited to like the suit and stuff as Vader and all that, and he was just a regular guy, I think he'd be like pretty unstoppable, like close to like what lore accurate Starkiller is. Honestly.
Well, something interesting too is I've now gone through at least like the audio version of the Darth Plagueis thing, so you learn a lot about basically the Sith plan and everything, and basically part of the reason Plagueis chose Palpatine was for his mind and like the political position he knew he could get him in to be the most powerful man in the galaxy and stuff. So that to me kind of puts into perspective why Palpatine chose certain people as his apprentices, and I feel like to him, Anakin is like the prime specimen of like, I'm already the most powerful like political guy in the world. I just want like pure power, and because I don't see Anakin necessarily being a political mindset, but more like kind of Palpatine was kind of positioning him as like a hero, right, to the Empire, where he's like, oh yeah, this guy stepped up and stopped the other Jedi, and you know, he like helped me crush their rebellion and stuff while they tried to kill me and everything. So I think that without Anakin becoming like machine Vader, it would have been a lot more dangerous, not only in terms of his power, but also like how Palpatine could use Anakin for like propaganda and being like, this guy is our hero.
Yeah.
Like, instead, Vader kind of becomes like secluded and hidden and everything.
Yeah.
And I also think too, with Anakin being that way, that obviously he wouldn't get like slowed down. I think that he would have been able to crush the rest of the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
because he wouldn't have had the setback of becoming Vader.
I
like,
agree.
Full Vader like that, you know.
Another scenario with that one too, though, that I've kind of thought of is, I think, without being Vader and him just being, you know, Anakin, but like regular Anakin, but just aligned with like the Sith, I think he probably would have maybe had the idea and the power to, for sure, to turn on the Emperor, solely because after a while, if he wasn't like, you know, bound to like what they were doing and stuff because of like the Vader suit and all that, and like what he owed to the Emperor and stuff, he eventually would have been like, dude, I haven't gotten what I was promised. And I feel like that would have eventually came up to where he's like, all right, brother, you're done.
You used me. Yeah. And I think too that would follow a lot more. They kind of, and I know in extended stuff, Vader attempted to kill Palpatine a few times or to like orchestrate that, but Palpatine was always like anticipating or whatever. But that falls into just like one of the fundamentals of Sith. Is it's supposed to be like the apprentice always is supposed to attempt to kill the master at a certain point. And I think if Anakin kept going on the path he was going of taking his power as he's getting more powerful and just descending more and more into pure evil without being set back from being prime Anakin, I think he could have taken down the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Because in sheer power alone, even though the Emperor is more skilled and experienced, I still think from the start he would have been a challenge for those two to go at it. There's not like a clear winner to me, but down the road, if Anakin was prime Anakin still, he would have been able to do it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
My next one, and this one's one that doesn't seem that big, but then when you think about it, you're like, wow, that actually would be significant. What if Luke were unable to take out the Death Star the first time, so they didn't have to rebuild? They just had it the whole time.
Well, most of the rebellion would have died.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the fallout of that?
Well, like you said, most of the rebellion would have died, but also I think that would pretty much just have been like Luke would have been a problem regardless, but also I feel like that would have led it to be more of like the rebellion is even smaller than it already was. It'd be more so than being like alright, like here's a group of people who make up like this like rebel army, plus like Luke who's like the last remaining Jedi. It would more so turn into Luke being the last remaining Jedi and then like a rebel strike team. Yeah. So it's like they could do small stuff and I guess like try to gain influence, but Vader and the Emperor probably would have been in power for much longer.
Well, too, like Yavin, or like the moon they were on, was just like that was like stop number one, So they wouldn't have stopped hunting rebels with it, and they would have used it. Like they are describing in that movie that they're going to use the fear of what they're going to do with the Death Star to keep everybody else in line, so it would have put even a stronger chokehold on rebels and probably would have set them back like decades in terms of organizing. Especially after watching Andor, just how much went into them having a solid organized base on that moon too, as like the Rebel Alliance, would have been years and years and years lost to the rebellion. It would have made the Empire actually pretty unstoppable. Yeah. For as much as Star Wars is like the underdogs taking over the top dog, I think that would have doomed them. But yeah, that is a good one. I think too, Luke Skywalker would be completely lost after that. He would have lost like Leia and all of them. Yeah. One I will go into that is also a Luke Skywalker one is at the end of Return of the Jedi, if Luke Skywalker gave into the dark side, killed Vader, and became the Emperor's new apprentice. I definitely think that the best way in like a what if show scenario to take this would be show a different layout of what the sequels would be, right? Because a lot of that is, like Vader's redemption and stuff, but then like Kylo Ren idolized him and stuff. With that would be then Luke Skywalker hunting down probably eventually the rest of the rebels and stuff, and it probably would have just indefinitely kept the Empire going again with somebody who, in terms of at least legend stuff, ended up being more powerful than Anakin. So, a very dark direction for a what if thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that would have just kind of continued what was happening. But also, I mean, it would have had to have really continued into the sequel movies. Really, because without Luke, the Rebels really just they didn't have much of a chance. I mean, you kind of need that.
And now probably becoming more powerful than Vader ever was, too.
Yeah.
And knowing all these secrets about the rebellion and stuff.
Yeah.
I think if that was the direction they were to go, a good way to follow that would be... I think it would be Leia would then be forced into a position of pursuing her own Jedi training. I have no idea how she would grow with that.
Yeah.
But as we now know, too, there's other Jedi running around out there at that time. So probably Ahsoka would get involved somehow.
Yeah.
And I'm just spitballing now about, if they did do this, they could bring in whoever they want. They could do like, Ahsoka is just fed up with it.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, I think that would be a very dark storyline to pursue. But I do think it would be a very cool thing to see like Luke Skywalker actually full dark side in a What If series. I have one more, but do you have any more you'd like to share?
I have one final one, which is pretty big. But what if Vader didn't have a change of heart and helped Luke? Like, what if he was just like, no, I'm not helping you. You're done for. You're on your own, brother.
Yeah, I think I don't really know what to expect because it's like what's going on in the Death Star is very like inside the Death Star is very like moving forward kind of based apart from the battle that's going on outside, right? Like the rebels would have still found a way to take out the generator and probably blow up the Death Star, but this would be also in a scenario probably where the Emperor, Vader, and Luke would get off in time. So I think it would probably be they'd get off the Death Star and then go right down and are like, we're going to find the rebels and just crush them. Or Vader and Palpatine would probably be like, all right, send everybody we can down there, fight them. They don't have Luke Skywalker anymore. They like lost their leader, basically.
Yeah.
So they'd probably go reorganize. And Palpatine would probably just make the best of Vader, even though he'd probably be disappointed. Still, he's like, I still got this guy.
See, I was kind of thinking that, I don't know. I feel like with how sinister the Emperor is, I feel like after he watched that, watch Vader essentially kind of, not lose, I guess, but, get whooped on, I feel like he'd be like, nah, you're done. You're not him anymore.
Whoa. Actually, the line is right there in the movie, too, that Vader was like, if you won't join us, then, like, your sister will. Mm-hmm. So they could go that route of, like, they hunt down Leia and get her on their side. Yeah. If they're... A lot of these are, like, really dark what-if scenarios, and I feel like that's just
that's just kind of how it would have been because everything that happened worked out. So,
So I guess a lot of what that scenario would be hunting down Leia and then just follow it through, like she falls to the dark side and becomes his new apprentice. Yeah. That'd be a really interesting one. But yeah, that'd be a very interesting one. And then I'll go into my last one. This one's kind of goofy, but I feel like it would fulfill something so many people have speculated on for a very long time, which is what if Jar Jar Binks was a Sith Lord the entire time?
He is. That's canon.
It's canon, yes. Which I think in that, it wouldn't even have to be that they had to break canon for it. Mm-hmm. They could just be like, what if we show you Jar Jar being off in the shadows during this? Like, because, he gets into a position where he can make dangerous political maneuvers that ultimately help the Sith. And there's all these little points people have made where it's like, why is he wearing that necklace? Like, that necklace is Sith or something like that. So they could just be like, okay, behind the scenes, here's what you didn't see Jar Jar doing. And it's like, they could call it what if, but they could do also like the Marvel thing where it's like the last episode is the most important one. So it's like, make it just ambiguous if this is actually going on. show you scenes happening as they would, and then just like pan over a little bit, and Jar Jar's like, I have no idea how that would end. I don't really know what happened to Jar Jar after Revenge of the Sith, but maybe he was in the shadows
He
the
was
whole
lurking.
time. Yeah.
He was orchestrating the entire thing.
Yeah, he could have been, because I'm sure it says somewhere something like what happened to him, but that's another thing where it's like, Jar Jar is a small enough character to where they could just be like, we don't know what happened to him, actually.
Yeah.
He could be out there, and just, it would be a goofy thing, but then just show Jar Jar manipulating things in the shadows at the most important events throughout every Star Wars thing after that, so, like, he somehow is involved at the Death Star, and, like, he orchestrated Vader dying, and, like, Kylo Ren falling to the dark side and all this silly stuff. But, I think, in terms of, like, fan service, with what a What If series would be, that would be one that I think would be very just satisfying and silly for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and
I think
really
a lot
fun.
of people would like that one.
It'd be really fun, yeah. And they could have a lot of fun with that too.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, that is probably, I think that's my last What If for right now for Star Wars. Do you have any other ideas for me?
Just one last quick brief one.
Yeah.
But how the final battle would have gone if the Ewoks decided not to help.
Why would the Ewoks have just abandoned them, though?
I don't know. They just decided not to. They were like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Well, I assume then that all of those rebels would have been killed on the spot. And the Ewoks would have fled in terror. Wow. Also, just a very dark ending.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost like a Family Guy skit.
Yeah. Like, all right,
Han
you guys
Solo
got
and
it.
all of them come out, and they're like, what do we do? What do we do? And there's like a pause where the Ewoks should have been there, but they aren't. Oh, man. Yeah. A morbid one, but yeah. They just decided, nah, we're not helping. Yeah, I think that wraps it up. And obviously this is all based on just the idea. And I think this was another rumor. There's always a rumor with, Star Wars might do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all based on that there was a rumor at one point that Star Wars might be considering a What If series, which I think would be appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, this has been the Mild Opinion Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.